Hello and welcome to the second episode of Make Sense with Aparupa and Artika. And I'm just going to wait for Aparupa to quickly join.
Hi.
Hi. I was just saying, welcome to the second episode of Make Sense with Aparupa and Artika, where we think we make sense.
Yeah, I think we make sense all the time.
Okay, so before we just start off, today's topic sounds very cryptic, I think. I think we were wanting for it to sound cryptic as well.
That's true.
So we also have a guest coming in tonight, but before that, Aparupa, could I just ask you to tell the audience about what we're talking about today and just end the suspense that we've kept for so long.
No, absolutely. So something that we said that was very important to both Artika and I is that, we wanted to ensure that while there are a lot of sex educators, there are a lot of educators in this space who are saying some fantastic things about, destigmatizing topics around sex, sexuality, and safety. They're talking about, using sex toys. They're talking about prioritizing self-pleasure. That is great, and that's good work that we must continue to do. However, that's not the reality for so many of us, is it? So we wanted to, hold these spaces wherein we could start fostering some conversations around, hey, what does it look like to maybe not have access to all those tools and resources? And what kind of tools and resources are a luxury? What kind of tools and resources are actually a necessity? So today we will focus largely on the whole sex toys piece, and we're very excited to bring this conversation to you. In fact, Artika and I had a really long conversation, as we always do. I all our calls just need to be on Clubhouse now, right? We're
and this is essentially an extension of our calls. We thought you all needed to hear it.
Pretty much. Sorry, I'm going to quickly take one question by Dr. Yuvi, who says, why are you tough on allies today? I really wasn't. I love allies. And I identify as an ally for so many movements, like the anti-caste movement, or for trans folks. I identify as an ally in multiple spaces. So I'm not being tough on allies. I'm just saying that in the acronym, A doesn't stand for allies. That's it. So yeah, why this particular topic was important for you to discuss, because I know both of us fully aligned. We're yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, like you said, just starting off from the point where you said that educators have done a great job, and actually we have one of those educators joining us in a short while as well. But yeah, educators have done a great job of destigmatizing, plus also kind of showcasing the products as not a high-end luxury item, but actually something that's much more basic, even though the prices aren't allowing it to be basic right now. But I also feel like I feel like this would be incomplete if I don't mention the brands, right? Because so much of our discussion is around that. So of course, the brands that are creating these products and selling these products, I understand their job is to sell a product and they create their marketing strategy accordingly. But I also feel like these brands have done a really great job of creating conversation around it and normalizing it, as something. So if you follow an Instagram page that's selling sex toys, for example, you are engaging in a conversation about it. You're putting it out in the public domain, which is great. Because I think before this, some of the brands that come to our mind, before this, I think the portrayal of a sex toy was basically used in movies and in popular culture to show a bad, I want to say girl because that was the intention, but to show a bad girl, right? Like that was the association that they wanted us to have, right? So in that sense,
also on the flip side, they would only show it in the context of in Western cinema and media, right? It's shown almost in the context of someone is really dissatisfied with their partner.
Right.
They're not happy, the partner is not helping them get off, etc. And that is why they need to use a toy almost as an insult to their partner.
Right. And I think that is the common notion amongst people, which will, slowly through education change, right? You're talking about Western cinema. I think I can quote an example which maybe people in India, maybe they've seen the movie. It's this Kareena Kapoor film called Veere Di Wedding, where Swara Bhaskar is, actually shown using a toy, and then that alone is shown as a reason for her failed marriage, for her separating from her partner, being sent back home. And, it's basically, if you think about it now, that alone, her sex toy alone, is the reason for the conflict of her character in that movie. So I think that kind of negative character which has been assigned to the sex toy, plus I also feel like so much portrayal has only been given to toys which are meant for people with a vagina or people with a vulva. Like, where do the others go? Like, that's like creating shame around them as well, that like people with a penis don't really need it, that's why they don't really show it, and if you're using it, you're probably not normal. So I think all of these things make it an important topic to talk about. And I'm so excited to hear what our guest also has to do. So should we get her on now?
Let's do that. While you do that, I'm quickly going to talk to our audience about but today is Lisa Mangaldas is a fantastic sexuality educator. She started doing sex ed in YouTube about 5 years ago, I believe, like even longer, and she's been doing that long before like any conversation about sex ed was so mainstream. Oh, she's there. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good too. Good too.
We're good.
About this topic.
So excited to talk to you both.
We're so excited to have you.
Everything you both do. I'm a big fan. So I'm so happy to all of us be talking.
Yeah.
That's so kind of you.
Lisa, I think we thought that you would be the perfect person to talk about this topic because you are someone who's very openly, endorsed sex toys, and you are someone who's used them as a prop in your reels, like so casually, right? Like normalizing the idea of a toy. And I also really love it because it makes sex play, which is so interesting, right? Like anything sexual, when it's made play, it suddenly makes it so much, easier, lighter for people to engage with. So we thought you'd be the perfect person to shed some light on this whole conversation about sex toys that's been happening of late. So we have like a bunch of questions for you, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. And we're very open to like dissenting views. We're very open to this becoming a very heated debate between.
No, I don't think it will. I feel like the three of us know how to have a very respectful disagreement. So I have a feeling it's not anyone looking for a cat fight has come to the wrong place.
For one, but never mind then. I'm all about like mock beefs and like fake fights because I've been watching the reality TV of late.
That should be another episode in itself.
So Lisa, let's get started. My first question to you is, do you really think that sex toys are a necessity, or do you think they're a luxury product? Given how they're priced, also given that not a lot of us have that kind of privacy at home, etc., to store them or to use them. I'd love to. Someone says Hindi. I'm gonna try as we go along, but no promises. But Lisa, would love to hear your thoughts on this.
I think of sex toys as technology. So now, whether you see technology as a necessity or a luxury is a subjective matter, but essentially what technology does is it enables you to do something simply and quickly, right? Efficiently. Even the etymology of the word technology, we think of it as something to do with gadgets and apps and things like that, electronics, but actually the word technology comes from the Greek word for art and craft and skill, technos, and the systematization of sort of a harnessing of a skill to enable efficiency. Okay, so in that regard, email makes communication easy, right? Or even a pillow in a way is technology. We could be lying on our hands, but we use pillows. So it doesn't have to be electronic to be technology, right? In a way, even a cucumber with a condom on, as you, Aparupa, talked about alongside lots of household items with Karishma in your recent post, you point to the fact that several things can be used to kind of assist in your self-pleasure practice. Now, sex toys and you know, particularly for vulva owners, are extremely efficient at providing a certain type of stimulation. I mean, so many vulva owners have had their first orgasm using a sex toy, for example. So in that regard, I would definitely classify them closer to necessity than to luxury. In that, you know, they're portrayed, as you guys were saying, even in cinema and stuff, they're portrayed like either this, whatever, the thing that the bad girl uses, but also as this novelty item, silly and funny.
Yeah.
You know, rather than something that's just normal and sort of like everyday. You know, I would, in my head, my vibrator is in the same category as my toothbrush, like an essential something that I am not ashamed of, something that really enables me to access one aspect of wellness in an efficient way. Now, it is not like you can't practice self-pleasure without a sex toy. I mean, you know, hands are amazing, and there's so many things you can do with your hands that you can't do with a toy. I think masturbation and self-pleasure doesn't have to be genital-centric. You know, it's nice. I think you've talked a lot about that, Aparupa. It's nice to be able to also touch all kinds of parts of your body, and your hands, you know, can very effectively touch everything from your head to your toes. So I quite like using a variety of things. For me, it's not an either or. It's nice to be able to use your hands. It's nice to be able to use unlikely items, whether it's a scarf turned into a blindfold or house clips turned into nipple clamps, as you've outlined. But I also love my electronic vibrator, you know, a clitoral stimulator or whatever it is. And I wish they was affordable enough. And in many countries they are, such that they're not considered a luxury at all, because they're cheaper than buying shoes or a handbag or any of these, and not even very expensive ones, you know. So I feel like young people spend money on these status symbols quite willingly. To me, a much better investment is a sex toy. You know, I mean, that's what I save to spend on. So I feel like you know, things that the purchasing power is relative, but I wish we lived in a world where all kinds of pleasure products were very accessible and very affordable. And I think it's good to note, though, that even in India, I feel like there's not enough information out there, and it's still so hush-hush. But, you know, there are some low-cost products available, often called massagers. Like, they have these euphemistic names, but like on your online marketplaces, I don't want to name any. I mean, you know, think of the obvious one. I know it's Amazon, is exploitative in all these ways, but whatever, if you really want a low-cost sex toy, there's some things available there already. You know, there's also like crystal wands and things like that, which are used in Reiki, that are very similar to these like crystal dildos and things like that that are popular in the West. So with a little research, a little innovation, a willingness to do sort of the research and the preparation to make even household items safe and hygienic, I feel like actually sex tech is more accessible than perhaps we think it to be, because you don't have to have some hot pink silicone vibrating object in order to enhance your play, you know?
I love that answer, and I love how you know, speak across the spectrum, and you also speak about like these discrete products that could be fashioned into sex toys. Arthika, what is your tuppence on this? What do you think? Like,
I love how you're mentioning the discrete products as well, because you know, of course, like we were talking about brands earlier, there are a lot of brands working to say, oh, like, don't hide it, and then there are other brands saying discreet delivery, you know, nobody will get to know. And I think both are important, because I don't think you can force somebody to be like, you don't know what kind of like living situation they're coming from. So you can't sort of block access by saying, oh no, you can't be discreet about it because this is absolutely normal. You know, the three of us here can agree that it's normal, but I feel like it will take people different amounts of time to reach that place, and that's okay. You know, like, I don't think we can kind of force somebody to be like, you know, it's okay. But I love how you're comparing it to a toothbrush. And, you know, just jumping off from that point, this is to say that you need a toothbrush even if you have a partner, which is what we were talking about. Which is what we were talking about, that, you know, like, you almost villainize technology because you're like that will somehow replace your partner, or the partner feels that they will be replaced because somebody is using a sex toy. So what do you have to say about that happening as a practice, because we do know it does happen? So what do you have to say to maybe people who are even thinking this in the audience right now?
I feel like we're socialized into perceiving any object of our partner's attention other than us as a threat. Like, people have become insecure even if a partner spends lots of time with their friend or with their own family member, or like, I don't know, I feel socialized to want to be the most important object of attention in the loved one's life, to the extent that you almost forget that you can really, human beings have the capacity to attend to many things. I mean, being attentive to my friend does not make me a less attentive partner, But it's funny, we're kind of conditioned, I feel, to feel insecure and to want to be number one, and we see anything else as a threat or something. I feel like it's partly the sort of obsession with monogamy, partly the sort of ideas around romantic love and the one, and I don't know. I think it's quite silly, actually, and I feel like it's not very helpful, because I think for a long-term relationship, particularly, and one that is sort of to be resilient, you have to make space for the other things in each other's life, and also I feel like when it comes to sexual pleasure, your own pleasure practice can often enhance your coupled play,
right?
Because it allows for you to get to know your own body really well. It allows for you to become more effective at communicating, and it also, I feel like, can ease some of the pressure. I mean, I feel like we never talk about sex, and we're meant to kind of pretend like we don't have it publicly, and then in bed with the love of your life, you're supposed to be this multi-orgasmic porn star expert, and it's such a dichotomy, right? We just think that people, I don't know, without, I feel like sexual ability, unlike any other thing that normally you think takes time to get good at and takes practice with a partner, and, learning to swim or dance or anything you'd think isn't some innate thing you're born with, but somehow we think we should just be born excellent lovers, And I feel like actually toys can really enhance your pleasure solo and as a couple, and can take some of the burden off of one I feel like we think our partner has to give us an orgasm, or we have to give them an orgasm, or their time in bed is completely contingent on our performance, as opposed to thinking of it as a shared experience, or as opposed to thinking of when I have sex with my partner, I give me an orgasm because I know what you know what I mean? I feel like it's nice for it to be a shared kind of exploration of pleasure, as opposed to being this, you're responsible for my good time and I'm responsible for your good time, and if you don't have a good time, it's my fault, and if I use a toy, then you're inadequate. I feel like those are kind of counterproductive to actually enjoying yourselves as much as you can. So
Yeah.
I think people should not be threatened by sex toys. I would embrace sex toys even as a couple, not just for solo play. There's this idea that sex toys are only for masturbation, but actually they can make partnered sex really fun as well. And there's toys for all genders, as you said. You were saying that there's this misconception that toys exist only for vulva owners, but there's toys for all genders. And I would be, just as I would love for my partner to be open to me using a sex toy, I would be very happy for my partner to use a sex toy, And I think there's many cis-het men, at least, are very closed off in terms of thinking of sex as anything other than vaginal penetration.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if we're on the subject of toys, there's a whole arena of toys for people with penises, or even people with prostates, whether or not they have a penis. So there's so much. I mean, imagine living your whole life without ever having access certain aspects of your pleasure. If you are interested in exploring sexual pleasure, why limit yourself because of, I don't know, some notion that you're inadequate because you're using this device, or your partner doesn't like you because they're using a device. I feel like it's a mental block that you just need to overcome.
Yeah, I think there's of course, definite association with inadequacy, the word that you use, absolutely the correct word. And also with cheating, somehow it's also extended into the conversation about cheating, that possibly somebody who's going out of the relationship for pleasure, even if it's an if it's a a non-living thing, it's an inanimate object, is somehow associated to inclination towards cheating or just not being satisfied, maybe. Again, coming from the place where 100% responsibility for the person's satisfaction is somehow on the partner and not even on the person themselves. And I think yes, like beyond the toys, the larger conversation is again about pleasure and the way it's perceived and the way it needs to change. That needs to change, I think.
I really agree with you, Lisa, when you say that it is about like ownership of folks, right? And ownership of them and their experiences. And
that's the word, exactly. Ownership, this possession, like I own my partner,
So it's really interesting that you touch upon all these various facets while saying that, hey, it's a choice, right? It's something that folks could, and this is something that we've spoken about privately as well, where we've always said anything that has to do with a person's sexuality is always a choice, but like sometimes we make choices out of these notions like you mentioned and prejudices like you spoke about. So it's important to also like critique why we're making certain choices, or like forget that, right? You don't want to use a sex toy, you don't have to, like nobody is forcing you. But
exactly.
Like, why judge someone who is? Why do you think that somebody who may be using it is less than, or is not having fun, or does not have a great relationship with their partner? Like, where are all those notions coming from is definitely important to critique and to be reflexive about, for sure. Artika, would it be possible to like mute the comments?
I really was trying to figure that out. But I don't think there's a way.
I think a useful analogy, we just look at each other, look into my eyes, Aparupa, ignore the comment. I'm looking at Artika's beautiful face because she has the biggest window and it's at my eye level. And then I keep looking in the corner to see lovely Aparupa. Okay, no, so what I was saying was that I find some helpful analogies in terms of thinking about what pleasure products can do. See, technology, as I said, it kind of makes things quicker and simpler, right? You can do something more easily and more quickly, typically with the technological upgrade. So easily and quickly is not always better, right? We've become a society that prides easy and quick, and so I mean, it has its advantages, but it's not everything. There's also something wonderful about doing things slowly and with your hands and all of that. But I think whatever aid you use, and whether it's motorized or non-motorized, or whether it's some household item or a fancy toy, I think of any pleasure product kind of analogous to like painting with a paintbrush instead of with your fingers, or like, accountant using a calculator. I was telling Artika this, I think. You can do the math on paper, and it can be quite enjoyable, I suppose, to do the math mentally or on paper, or take your time to figure out a sum if you're into mathematics. But when, it's also quite handy to have a calculator to help you. And if you're not particularly inclined mathematically, it's very helpful, right? And, with a paintbrush, I mean, you can do certain things. I paint a lot, and I use my fingers sometimes. I use brushes and pens. I use a whole bunch of different tools. And one doesn't do exactly the same thing as the other, and each has its benefit, But should I be threatened by a paintbrush? Should I be threatened by a calculator? I mean, no, right? They're here to make your life easier. They're not taking anything away. In fact, they're only adding. And neither should should an accountant feel threatened by a paintbrush calculator? Should an accountant be threatened by a calculator? Should a painter be threatened by a paintbrush, So I feel like it's helpful for all parties, whether you are using a toy, or whether your partner is using a toy, or whether you're just considering whether you need one or not, to think of it like that. It's a tool, it's technology, it's something that's there. I wish it was accessible, but it's in no way a threat. It doesn't mean you're bad without one. It's something that's supposed to serve you, basically.
Right.
Yeah. I also know folks who like save up to purchase one, right? Like, and that's something that we do with other objects. Like if we want, the special shoes or like a phone, we're going to save up to purchase it. So why not also think of this like that? Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the things that you're saying, Lisa. Like, I mean, I'm really like trying to find a cat fight here, but that's not happening. I'm very, give me something.
And I love that you guys talked about space, because honestly, that is a necessity. Privacy, in my opinion, should be a basic human right, and yet it feels like a luxury, you know.
Yeah.
And it can feel like a luxury even if you have physical space, because you're not allowed any privacy. I mean, I think people in marriages are often not allowed any privacy, even if they have a huge
Right.
home. So it's a
Yeah.
funny thing where it's not only about physical space, but about also allowing the people in your life who you share physical space with, allowing them privacy instead of feeling threatened by their need for privacy, you know. But obviously
Yeah.
also on a economic and like physical level, a lack of access to privacy is a huge I mean, I feel like it's something we need to, as a society, as a whole country, I don't know, as the world, like every human being deserves a room of their own, right? As Virginia Woolf said. And I hope one day the world
Yeah.
accommodates for that. You know, it's absurd that there's enough
Yeah.
wealth in this world for everybody to live comfortably, and yet 1.5 people have all the, you know, not really, you know what I mean.
Yeah. In fact, Artika said last time we were speaking about spaces, Lisa, wherein she said that, hey, like if a couple wanted to, like, for instance, let's say they're in a household and they wanted to like have sex, or even like forget house, right? If you're in a dorm and you know someone's partner is coming over, you will make space for that kind of like sexual interaction among people. So why is it that we can't like extend that similar kind of courtesy to self pleasure as well? Like we build a relationship with ourselves too, and our bodies as well. So why is there, yeah, like no space for something of that sort, right? And you also, like, you know, equated it with accounting and painting, which are modes of self-expression. So like very much like self-pleasure is also like self-expression. And yeah, we have a fundamental right to self-expression. So there has to be definitely, I mean, creative ways for sure in which we can make space for folks who want, and for ourselves to explore.
Yeah, and I think the conversation about space last week also went from, you know, we of course imagined and started off with the physical space, like we're saying, like a room, or, but the guest we had actually extended the conversation very beautifully into space being an abstract concept about safe spaces being there for this expression. And I think with something like using toys, also both the spaces, you know, are important. You know, it's important to have that safe space, not even with other people, but just within yourself as well, to accept that this is something that could, you know, be great for you. And I think just jumping off from that point, maybe the last question, and then we can talk. But the last question that we have is, what do you have to say to the younger generation right now, let's say, who are just starting off and who are just kind of educators? Am I frozen?
Artika just suddenly, okay,
Yeah.
there, she's back.
This
We
has
lost
to
you for a
happen
second.
once.
After younger generation,
I know.
yeah.
But okay, yeah. So about the younger generation, which is maybe learning about the sex toys from educators like us or from brands, what should they understand about the necessity in terms of like keeping in mind that they have different accessibility? Like, is this something that they should proactively be looking into buying or investing in, or you know, can they give it some time? Like, what would your take be? Because I think there is a lot of confusion in that space.
You know, I really like giving a prescriptive thing, like you must do this or you must not do this. And I always say that, you know, no matter what all we educators say, I mean, most of what I say is just factual stuff. I reserve opinion unless, I mean, obviously, I think when it comes to matters of prejudice and matters of, you know, disenfranchising certain communities, this is not a debate, in my opinion. There is no second, like there's only one side to those things. I feel like on social media, they become perceived of as opinions, but it's not an opinion to be a misogynist. That's just wrong. It's not an opinion to be racist. You know what I mean? I cannot defend that side. I mean, there is no defense for that side. So I feel like, unfortunately, on social media, we're not very good at discerning between fact and opinion. And people think, you know, sex educators are putting out content. Or like people will send me other people's videos and be like, look, so-and-so is copying your content. And I'm like, no, you know something? How can anyone we don't own this information. This is factual information. If 10 more people are saying it, good. Shout it from the rooftops. I don't own this information. I've bothered to study it. I've created like a curriculum for myself because I didn't have the opportunity to, I don't know, where do you go in India to get a degree in sex education? I studied art and literature with a focus on gender and sexuality in college, but I also kind of like taught myself because I was really interested in providing sex ed. I don't have a monopoly on that information. Facts. Nobody owns facts, you know? So I feel like all the stuff that I say is primarily factual and on occasion maybe driving awareness. But I rarely give advice or like expert tip, like this is how you give a blowjob or this is how this position is because only you and your partner, if in a couple situation, are experts on each other's pleasure. I am not an expert on your pleasure. How can I know what turns you on? I can maybe talk about in general terms, these are certain things that many people find arousing, or these are certain things that might be helpful to explore. But truly, only you are an expert on your pleasure. So if you want a sex toy and if you're ready for one, only you know that, you know, I can only tell you these are out there. This is what they do. I find them really fun, but can I tell you, you have to have one or you don't have? I mean, no, who am I to tell you that? So I feel like it's really a decision for you to make. And I feel like we're constantly, I hate the word influencer. And I feel like on social media and in the back end of content creation, people give you this advice, like dumb things down, you know, people need it. And I feel like, why should I underestimate the intelligence of the viewer, of the consumer, of whoever is on the other end of this advice? You know, you can make choices for yourself. You are smart. No one knows you better than you. So I can only try to do my best to provide some information that's helpful, that's worth considering perhaps, so you can make an informed choice, but the choice is yours, you know?
Yeah, very, very well said, Lisa. Definitely, it's each person's choice. And also, like, it doesn't have to be a choice that we make once, right? Just because you own one doesn't mean you have to constantly use it. Like, there are so many appliances, like, since we have equated this to an appliance, there are so many appliances around your house that you don't necessarily use on an everyday basis. But you have it around because, like, hey, it makes your life easier every now and then. And that's good enough. No, fully resonate with what you're saying. Yes, absolutely.
And I think when Lisa
but it is an
says
exciting universe. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, please continue.
No, I was going to say that, like, if you are curious or if you do think it's a fun thing to explore, it's worth knowing that, you know, there's not just one type of toy or two types of toy. It's like it's a rabbit hole once you dive into the world of pleasure products. There's so many kinds of toys at so many different price points, so many different materials, some that are motorized, some that aren't. You can use multiple toys together. Like, if it is something that interests you, kind of like I mean, you know, there's people who are really passionate about stationery or cooking ingredients or whatever it is. And just like it can be, so if you are curious and intrigued by this stuff, it is a whole world like worth discovering. It's not a one-time, you know, there's not just one or two. I feel like there's in popular culture and in representations of pleasure products and all, you kind of see only this like silicone, I don't know, either rabbit style toy, like 2 or 3 types of toys, but actually there's like, I don't know, hundreds of types of toys at least. And, you know, glass and steel and wood and ceramic. And once you get a handmade toy, there's like artisanal toys. It's a whole world like any other product category. So I feel like if you do want to get yourself a toy, it's worth researching and exploring and, you know, doing the same amount of research you do to buy any other thing that, the washing machine, you're going to read a bunch of reviews, right? So read 10x the number before buying a sex toy. You want it to work for you, you know?
Correct. So, like, you know, you mentioned how it's not just a dildo, right? It's not just a phallic shaped toy. Yes, that works for some people and they enjoy it and like more power to them. But also like the recent post that you spoke of where we, you know, spoke about DIY sex toys, and we intentionally did not put explanations about how to use each toy because we wanted to start a conversation around it. And everybody was like so confused because our colonized mind always thinks of, you look at a toy, and also because, media, and that's the notion that we've been fed. You think about where do I put this in? Like, how do I penetrate with this? If I can't, then clearly not. What do you do with a bucket of water? Like, how can it be a toy? because how it doesn't go inside in anywhere in my body. But like toys are so much more than that. You know, like you said, there are toys for different parts of your body. There are toys for different moods. There are toys that work with temperature. There are toys that work with motion. There are toys that are just there to, you know, push the boundary of pain and pleasure. So yeah, just like the options are limitless. And like you also said, Lisa, that you don't have to make that expensive purchase yet. You can get creative and then slowly build, you know, see if you're even interested to purchase, invest in a toy. Okay to, you know, wash your laundry for a bit with your hand, try different tools before you purchase an actual washing machine. Maybe you buy a semi-automatic and then you eventually purchase a fancy machine, right? No, absolutely. Love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the post that you just mentioned, yeah, one of the things that we were talking about. Tell me when I'm back.
Because moving and we'll see her move. Oh,
There she is. There she
Okay.
is. Okay.
You're back.
So I was saying that, yeah, of course, one of the things that we came across yesterday when we were looking at your post was people thinking, okay, how can we use this for penetration? And then yesterday, a friend of mine who I'm on a group with, a close friend of mine, shared your post actually and said, oh, this is great, but only if I had a partner. And it was shared to a group. So I said, oh no, why do you feel that way? So that was the other thing that they felt, which is the opposite of what we're saying, that people feel like they need to use toys when they don't have a partner. But then, I mean, and honestly, that's the thing which Lisa also said, that we can ultimately, we or anybody else can ultimately just provide information, but what works for you will and has to be decided by you. So, and the way people interpret that information can also be so different, as we can see.
Yeah.
But you know, what Aparupa was saying about the penetration-centric view of sex, on the one hand, that informs our partnered pleasure, but perhaps it informs how we think of masturbation even more, because anyway, we don't want to, we kind of don't think it's what, you know, people might think, oh, what a waste of time. Like, why should I light myself a candle or buy myself flowers or play music for myself or like give myself a massage? Like, why would I do that? Like, as if we're not worthy or it's a waste of time and resources, or somehow we, I don't know, I guess the combination of patriarchy, capitalism, productivity culture, a whole bunch of weird factors, I don't know, whatever it is, contribute to this idea, I feel, that like setting aside time for yourself or investing in non-essential items for your own pleasure and well-being is like extraneous or, I don't know, indulgent or something like that. I don't know how many people make the time in their pleasure practice to do things other than genital centric stimulation, because in our heads, firstly, that is nothing other than genital centric stuff is considered sex at all. And then if we're making time, like we have 5 minutes, well, you know, you don't have the time or the space or whatever. So and you think of sex in this way because you've been socialized or conditioned to. So I feel like we don't even think of self-pleasure with sufficient attention to the fact that there's more to it than genitals and penetration. You know what I mean? It's a funny thing where I feel like that informs how we must. So maybe when they see your, you know, blindfold and things like that, they're like, I'm not going to blindfold myself.
Yeah.
So where's my partner? You know, I wish I had a partner. Or like, I don't know, it's funny, but we kind of think of those types of things as a waste of time. We don't think I don't know, it's a weird thing. I don't know whether it's an unwillingness to prioritize ourselves or whether it's just a conditioning of certain things are to be done with another person. I'm not sure. A bunch of things, right? I mean, if I'm honest, even I don't give myself as much focus and attention as I would other people in my life. Like I definitely put everybody else first, right? And especially with family, if we live with family, I don't know, I feel like we're definitely conditioned to put and maybe as vulva owners especially, there's that conditioning of like you do the emotional labor for everybody else. And your own kind of preferences and priorities are secondary, you know?
Yeah. That is so heavily incentivized as well, right? Like you very rightly said, Lisa, like productivity guilt. It does not benefit capitalism for us to love ourselves and to take care of ourselves.
And it's also so much like, oh, like how many times will you willingly set up a nice table for yourself and have a meal by yourself? But you're more likely to do that if you had someone coming over, because you just kind of associate that with wasting your time somehow, right? Like if you're just doing it for yourself, you're like, okay, I can just eat inside, or I can just eat in whatever space I have. So I guess this is like when you equate your own, you know, self-care or pleasure with wasting time, or like at least assigning it lesser, you know, importance in your list of things.
Yeah. So I think that's the larger message that we want to leave all our audience with. The good ones, not the ones who've been like saying very weird things in the comments. These are
Just weird things.
But like, you know, when like something terrible, something gory, like an accident happens on the road and you can't bring yourself to look away. It's almost, or like there's a wound and like it's bleeding, but you can't help but pick on the scab. It's almost like
The comments, reading the comments.
I can't help but like read the comments. But
Yeah, I think before we leave, I just want to say sorry that, you know, we couldn't cater to the people who you know, would understand Hindi. But if you're still here, then I just want to say कि इंडिया में हर अलग-अलग जगह पे अलग-अलग भाषा बोलते हैं, and मैं लीजा और अपरूपा दोनों को जानती हूँ, and वो लोग primarily हिंदी नहीं बोलते हैं. So you're kind of shaming regional languages. I don't know what else to say about this. Being like, love your English talk and all.
Also, like, sorry.
I wish I could speak better Hindi.
Yeah.
But it's my Hindi is, it takes a lot of effort for me to make my Hindi YouTube videos. I have to really script them beforehand, because my Hindi isn't good enough to speak. So I'm sorry, I'm not able to speak live in Hindi confidently.
I think that's really it for me as well. I speak Hindi quite all right. You know, went to Kendriya Vidyalaya and studied Hindi and like all of that, but I'm not able to articulate these ideas in Hindi for some reason, and that's like a failing on my part. And that's something that
Likewise.
I can like memorize, you know, a lesson and then go and teach kids in Hindi. That I can do. But if you like spontaneously ask me to like talk in Hindi, especially about sexuality, like I find it very, very challenging.
I think you're both fine, because like sometimes we just don't have the vocabulary for it. I think Lisa and I have discussed this long ago, how some of the vocabulary doesn't even exist, you know, for some things.
I mean, it's something I'm very interested in working on, and I'm working on my own Hindi much more. I prefer to be able to, live is a lot of pressure, but I think the language and navigating the language for things in Indian languages as well, and not just using English as the default, is a priority for me. Although I grew up in Goa and Bangalore and Kodi and then in New York, so I didn't really like spend my childhood in a place where people around me spoke Hindi all the time, you know. So my Hindi, even though I understand it, my spoken Hindi is a little, everyone on my YouTube channel says I sound like Alexa, or like, you know, some sort of robot or something, and I do, but like, hey, at least I'm giving you the information.
I agree.
So
also just want to, you know, take a second to quickly apologize to folks who felt unsafe because of the comments, you know, folks who joined to come and hear a discussion on an interesting topic and had to kind of look at the comments and, you know, felt a certain way. We're really sorry that you had to go through that. Next time we'll make sure to mute comments.
Also, there were about some 40 questions which I just saw. Most of them said talk in Hindi, and other things which we don't want to address. But there was one which I think we can just, that's a good maybe like place to end, and maybe people want to hear about it, which said how to confront your parents if they find your sex toy. I don't know if this person is still on the chat, but yeah, this was the question, I think. And I think, do you have any insights? Does anybody have any insights on this?
They found your toys and then they've like called you out on it, or like what is happening?
Just says how to confront parents that have found your sex toys.
That's
you should tell your parents. No.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say that I feel like something we don't consider enough, and if parents are watching, you know, self-pleasure is the safest way of experiencing sexual pleasure. There is almost no risk of STDs, and there's no risk of pregnancy. So when safely and hygienically used, it is a very, very low risk way of experiencing pleasure. And given the stigma attached to having a partner in our society, and for all the policing that parents do, I feel like our Indian parents should be encouraging people, buy sex toys. I will give you a sex toy. Then it's amazing how I feel like as far as like casual hookups go, particularly for vulva owners, often they're not very fulfilling. I mean, personally, again, it can be different for different people, so I can't speak for everybody. But personally speaking, after I got a vibrator, I was like, why would I take the bus when I have a Ferrari? You know, that's how it felt. So I feel like, I mean, if I can be lighthearted about it, of course, I'm slightly joking here, but I think that given how paranoid we are about our young people having relationships, we should be very encouraging of self-pleasure, you know, because what is your objection? I mean, I know we criminalize all sorts of expressions of sexuality. We have to pretend we don't have a sexuality until we get married and then pop a baby out, like as if, you know, the stork brought it home or whatever. So I feel like I hope that, because I'm 31 now, a lot of my friends are having kids. I feel like soon there'll be parents watching my content, and I hope that a new generation, that like as people become parents, I hope they won't chastise their kid if they find a sex toy. I don't know about earlier generations that perhaps had less exposure to sex positive ideas and all of that. I mean, I can imagine it's not an easy situation if a parent finds a sex toy and like punishes the kid. So, which is why your post yesterday was really helpful, and why sometimes, while it's great to be able to proudly hold on and display your sex toy, if you don't have the ability to do that, that's also okay. And there are non-phallic looking, kind of just object looking things that could just look like a decorative item or even pass as a different item. There are all kinds of things out there, you know. So to kind of anticipate and protect yourself from that problem, you can perhaps, if you're interested in purchasing a sex toy or, you know, making a DIY one, you can consider what would be most inconspicuous. And hands mean you don't have to hide anything.
Correct. Yeah. Hit my hand. No, never mind. Sorry. Also, like whatever you say in that moment, right? Because I can understand that it could be really unsafe for some people. In fact, someone said, "Bahar nikal denge ghar se," and you know that is a very, very real possibility. So if you were to say something like it's a vibrator, it's not a sex toy, I get neck pains, parents are not idiots, but like I sort of feel like with some parents, they just need you to give them an excuse, and they're sort of ready, they're willing, they're just like reaching out, they're like, give me an excuse, I don't want to accept that my child is a sexual creature. So it's okay for you to make an excuse in that moment and prioritize your safety, right? And to say that, hey, sorry, this is just a massager or something of that sort, or not mine, don't know how it got there, I've used that a few times. Not in relation to sex toys, in relation to other things, but yeah, definitely have like denied till the point where my parents are just like gave up. So I think that is a very real reality of people as well, which is why we wanted to have this conversation in the first place. So yeah, so even if in that moment you need to, you know, prioritize your safety and like say a white lie, it's okay. It's not shameful to own one. It's nothing to get caught with, because there is nothing wrong doing. It's your privacy that has actually been violated, right? So your toy was sort of like found without your consent, so to say. So yeah, so there's nothing wrong with what has happened, but like, you know, please do what you need to do in that moment to be safe. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
sorry. No, go, Artika. No, please.
No, I was just thinking about what Aprupa was just saying about making excuses or excuse to lie because, you know, you're not ready to, at that time, have that conversation with your parents. I have no real insights, by the way. I'm just telling you about a reel I saw. So I saw a reel which had this person saying, oh, my mom found my wand and now I'm trying to convince her that it's a mic. And the whole reel is her using the wand to sing along. So I was like, yeah, I think that's okay, because again, people should have their own time in which they, you know, are able to have these conversations with their parents or anybody else as well. Like it could be peers also.
Yeah. Also, like some wands do look like curlers. Can I just say, like hair curlers? Whatever you need to say in that moment. Yeah, just say that like use it to curl my hair or for whatever other reason. And it's okay. It's okay that that happened. And I hope that you're able to get out of that situation safely. But yeah, and also like the other option is to have that honest conversation with them. Like your parents are even like 10% receptive. It may be a long-term project with them. But I do feel like just as much as, you know, parents raise children, children also raise parents. And it's okay for you to, you know, which is really wrong, and it's problematic because like that's parentification of children. But nevertheless, you know, like children know more about maybe sex toys, the latest technologies, gadgets, and parents may not know as much, and they may view it as something shameful and otherworldly. So it's okay for, you know, you to also spend that time and want to have that conversation with them if it's possible.
I feel like also though, you know, the way young people view sex, and I've been guilty of this as well, is weirdly ageist. Like, I feel like we only think young people have sex and only young people are sexual. And even though we have to hide it, we kind of never consider the sexuality of people like our parents or older people. Or, I mean, and sadly, I feel like in our society, contemporary society anyway, we, you know, parents have to behave like they don't have a sexuality, even though you're evidence of their sexuality. So it's a funny thing where, you know, I mean, so often we underestimate the fact that even our parents once, and they encourage us to underestimate it, unfortunately. Do you know, like your parents were also, at one point, I mean, maybe even still, you know, that they're human beings with desires and curiosities. And I feel like as you grow older and your relationship with them becomes more honest because you're no longer dependent on them. And I don't know, I guess it gives you a little bit more ability to express yourself without fearing consequences because you're no longer living with them or you're no longer dependent on them. You start to see them as human beings a bit more. And I feel like, I mean, you know, I wish we could live in a world where you could gift your mom a sex toy. Or, you know what I mean? Here we still, that seems absurd to people or something. But why should it be any different from giving her a handbag or a pair of shoes or a toothbrush or whatever, right? Like, that's how normal these things are. You know, and why should we think that after a certain age you just become this? I feel like that's how young people think. Like, once you start having gray hair and wrinkles and you're like, I don't know, you know, you're no longer sexual, or we don't even want to deal with we don't want to think about your sexuality. I feel like young people kind of exclude older people from their vision of what, you know, of people with desires. I'm not saying you have, I didn't mean to suggest that you need to be chasing older people. Although, I mean, that's a whole other thing. But I just meant that, like, why exclude people from the, from this, like, arena of wanting pleasure? You know, I feel like that doesn't end at a certain age, and it's sad that our society makes us think that.
Yeah, fully guilty of that myself. Just like you infantilize younger folks, you also do something akin to that with older folks as well, wherein you stop viewing them as sexual creatures, or just like people who have a sexual expression of some sort. Yeah, fully agree. Great question, by the way, Artika, that you picked.
And yeah, I think it's
really weird ones to pick.
I just quickly, I'm like feeling like I wish I didn't know English so I couldn't read these comments right now. That's the feeling I'm left with right now.
Oh.
But yeah, no, thank you so much for that answer, and thank you so much for joining us. And I think we're going to go overtime every week, and we have no regrets.
We said 20 minutes. We said 20.
I know, that's why I'm so sorry we've gone overtime again.
But who are you sorry to, Artika? People can just tune out if they don't want to listen to us.
No, not
sorry
people, people, to you, because I told you that we want to.
Are you kidding? I love talking to you guys.
I think we stopped being sorry to people a while back.
Yeah, we should be. And I feel like instead of us apologizing for the comments, although I do feel bad if anybody felt unsafe, I think whoever's tuning in and commenting should also be, you know, remember that these are human beings here. And honestly, you do yourself a disservice by saying the things you do, because you might as well have a sign that says creep on your forehead, you know? So...
And
yeah,
I don't
feel
know
like
who
people,
puts
I mean,
in
I
the
don't even
effort.
read. I'm not reading the comments because I can't keep up and my eyesight isn't great. But in general, even the comments I get, I mean, in general, being a woman on the internet, or being anything other than a cishet man on the internet. Maybe even cishet men, I think if you're left leaning, you probably get similar comments. But yeah, it's just like, why, man? Don't you have better things to do than spew, like, disagree with me? I like being disagreed with, but don't slut shame me and hurl insults at me. Like, you just look like an idiot.
Yeah.
And it actually takes more effort to type in that comment, to stay here for this conversation, or to, even
I find
view
it
our
funny
content, and then
that exactly. It's like, why? And the other thing that really bothers me, since we have some 600 people listening, is that people who comment will then get bullied by these creepy other people. And especially if it's women or queer people who comment, it will be, some sort of invitation to creepy, mainly cishet men, to then harass these people just because they commented. Please don't do that. I mean, I don't know why it's 2021 and I need to be giving you this information. Like, I don't know why this isn't already clear to you, but it really frustrates me that you harass people you don't even know just because they've commented on a sex positive post. Don't do that.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. And also, like, I really appreciate this one person from the display picture, looks femme. So what they've been doing is, each time, like, there've been a lot of like really weird comments, this person will post just like a bunch of hearts. So that's all. I think that's super great that they're doing that. Really appreciate the folks, who've been, and there've been a bunch of folks who have said, don't say such things, like, hey, like, respect people, and so on and so forth. So appreciate those folks as well. And yeah.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think the vast majority of people are lovely, but I think the anonymity the internet affords, I don't know, some people just get kicks of it or want a reaction or something, and I don't care what they say to me, but it really upsets me when they go after other people who've taken the time and given themselves, I don't know, whatever, been willing to be vulnerable and share something or say something in agreement with something about sex. And then you go and, like, I don't know, hit on or harass or whatever. It's just I feel like what happens to us on the streets as women or as queer people, it happens to us online as well. You feel unsafe. You're not able to inhabit public space alone. And it's infuriating because it's a basic right. We were talking about privacy. Even online, I feel like there's not enough respect given to, like, people's space,
I agree. Yeah. No, I'm glad gave these folks. Beef happened that I manifested.
But we were all in agreement.
We were all in agreement, but beef happened with the terrible people, mean people. I'm not gonna call them, weirdo. Just like terrible, mean people in the comments. Yeah. But and really appreciate.
But thank you for all the love in the comments. I'm seeing such lovely things, and in general, I would say there's much more love than there is pushback for sex education, which is really, I thought it would be much more hate and much less love, but I would say overwhelmingly I've seen incredible receptiveness. Like, people want this information. They're super polite and encouraging and grateful for it, and I'm so happy that is the case, and I'm so happy there's so many more people talking about it. Like, I really think the future is bright.
I agree. On that fantastic note, before we go on any other rants.
Yes. Okay, bye guys. Right? Yeah. That's you kicking me off the line.
No, but, like, honestly, thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you so much, Artika, for, like, wanting to do this as well.
Thank you so much for sharing your time, both of you.
Yes.
Thank you, Artika, and thank you, Aprupa. You both are the loveliest.
As are you. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.